All right, let's kick off this deep dive. And today we're looking at ChatGPT for project management.
Sounds good.
You sent over this blog post, right, by Steve's Jr.
Yeah.
ChatGPT gestão de projetos. Otimizar tarefas en resultados con inteligencia.
It's the one.
Dated January 16th, 2025.
Yeah.
It's pretty recent. And, well, we can see what we can pull out of this, you know?
Yeah, see how this AI tool can maybe change the way we work on projects.
Exactly. And, I mean, one of the things that jumped out at me right away, Steve Jr. talks about communication.
Okay.
You know, how important clear communication is as, like, the foundation for any successful project.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we all know how much a simple miscommunication can just totally derail everything.
For sure. But what I found interesting was that he's not just saying, hey, use ChatGPT to communicate faster.
Right.
It's more about using it to communicate better, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about it, right? Project managers spend so much time just clarifying things, making sure everyone's on the same page, you know, sending updates, all that stuff. What if you could offload some of that to an AI?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
ChatGPT could help you draft those detailed progress reports or even, you know, translate all that technical jargon into something that stakeholders can actually understand.
Right, like it could actually write the emails for you to update the team on project progress.
Exactly.
Which, honestly, I think a lot of people would love.
I mean, think of all the time you'd save.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's not even just about the time, right? It's about reducing those misunderstandings and errors that can really cost you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge for any project.
Huge.
So, okay, we've talked about communication, but then the blog post goes into task prioritization.
Okay.
And I think anyone who's managed a project knows that that can be a complete nightmare.
Oh, yeah. Those to-do lists can get out of control pretty quickly.
Totally. So how does ChatGPT help us kind of conquer that?
Well, imagine having an assistant who could look at everything you need to do. Your deadlines, the importance of each task, all of that, and then just organize it for you.
Oh,
That's basically what ChatGPT can do.
wow.
It breaks down those big projects into smaller, more manageable steps.
So you're not just staring at this huge mountain of work.
Exactly. And it helps you prioritize so you know what needs to happen first.
That's so helpful.
There's even this example in the blog post where Steve Jr. says you could literally tell ChatGPT, replan the schedule after a 2-week delay, and it would just, you know, adjust everything for you.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to go through and manually replan everything yourself.
That would be a lifesaver.
It takes so much pressure off.
Yeah, totally. And then it frees you up to actually focus on, like, keeping the project moving forward.
Exactly, the bigger picture.
So we've got communication, we've got task prioritization, but then there's also the whole, like, decision-making aspect of project management.
Right.
Which, let's be honest, can feel pretty intense sometimes.
Oh, yeah. It's like walking a tightrope.
Totally. Every decision you make has these ripple effects, and you really have to think things through.
And that's where I think ChatGPT could be super valuable.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, instead of just going with your gut feeling, you could actually use ChatGPT to analyze different scenarios and see like what the potential consequences of each decision might be.
Interesting.
It can process all this data that you might not even be aware of,
Right?
and then give you suggestions based on that data.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
So in the blog post, Steve Jr. suggests, you know, asking ChatGPT things like, analyze the risks associated with extending the deadline by 2 weeks. It's almost like having a consultant right there with you, helping you weigh your options.
That sounds incredibly helpful.
And it moves you away from making decisions based just on gut feeling, which happens a lot in project management.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
And instead, you're letting data guide you, which just makes for better choices overall.
Makes sense. So it's like taking some of that pressure off and giving you more confidence in the decisions you're making.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Now, Steve Jr. also talks about using ChatGPT for team empowerment.
Yes.
Which I think is a really interesting angle because we all know how important it is to have a well-equipped team.
Absolutely. And he makes the argument that ChatGPT can actually be a fantastic training tool.
Okay.
Like, each team member might need different kinds of support, right?
Right.
And that's where things get really interesting with ChatGPT because it can provide personalized training
Oh, wow.
tailored to each person's needs and their learning style.
So it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of training program.
No, not at all.
It's really individualized.
Exactly. And it can also offer on-demand support. So if someone's stuck on something, they can just ask ChatGPT for help.
That's incredible. I mean, it's almost like having a personal tutor for each team member.
Right.
And Steve Jr. actually gives some specific examples in the blog post.
Oh.
Like, You could ask ChatGPT to create a quiz to assess team knowledge on agile methodologies.
Okay.
Or even suggest practical exercises to help people develop their project management leadership skills.
So you're really going beyond those generic training materials.
Yeah, and you're giving people a more customized and engaging learning experience.
Exactly. And when your team feels supported and confident in their skills, they're going to perform at their best.
Which ultimately benefits the whole project.
Absolutely.
So it seems like we've got a lot of potential benefits here with ChatGPT.
For sure. It could really be a game changer for how we approach project management.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to hear what Steve's Jr. has to say about some of the challenges and potential downsides as well, because, every new technology has its pros and cons.
Absolutely. We can't just ignore those.
So I'm curious to see what he brings up there, and we'll dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. And, a well-trained team can handle all sorts of things, like risk management, which is a big part of any project.
Oh, for sure. And that's another area where ChatGPT can really come in handy. Right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as Steve Jr. points out, that traditional risk management can be, well, kind of subjective.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time.
Right.
But with ChatGPT, you can actually feed it data, like all sorts of data,
Yeah.
Project details, historical information, even like industry trends.
Oh.
And it can actually help you spot those potential risks that you might have missed.
So it's almost like having another set of eyes constantly looking out for problems.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And he even suggests asking things like, based on past projects, what are the most common causes of budget overruns? That kind of insight can be super valuable.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it takes away a lot of that guesswork, right?
Absolutely.
Instead of just relying on your intuition,
Yeah.
You're actually basing your decisions on real data.
Exactly.
That's a game changer.
And it lets you be more proactive, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you can start thinking about those mitigation strategies early on.
Right, instead of just scrambling to put out fires later.
Exactly.
Which makes a lot more sense.
Much better approach.
Okay, so another thing that Steve Jr. talks about is using ChatGPT for project documentation. And I know that might not sound very exciting.
I was going to say, I'm sure some people are groaning right now.
Yeah, I mean, documentation can be kind of a drag sometimes.
It can be tedious.
But it's so important.
Oh, absolutely. Essential, really.
But what if you could delegate some of those tasks to ChatGPT?
Okay, I'm listening.
Like, think about all those things you have to do. Writing meeting minutes, creating status reports, putting together technical documentation.
Yeah.
What if you could just hand those off?
That would be pretty amazing.
Steve Jr. gives some examples in the blog post.
Oh, yeah.
Like asking it to generate a summary report of the key decisions made in today's meeting.
Okay, yeah.
That would save so much time and effort.
And it would probably be more consistent, too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You'd have accurate and well-formatted documentation every single time.
Which is crucial because good documentation keeps everyone on the same page.
Right.
It helps with knowledge transfer,
Yeah.
and it can even protect you during audits.
And it's one of those things that might not be glamorous,
Right.
but it's absolutely necessary for good project management.
And it sounds like ChatGPT could make it a whole lot easier.
Definitely.
So we've talked about communication, tasks, decision-making, documentation.
Yeah.
But one thing that really stood out to me was this idea of ChatGPT actually personalizing project management approaches.
Oh, interesting.
Because every project manager kind of has their own style and preferences, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So how does that work with ChatGPT?
Well, Steve's Jr. mentions that ChatGPT can actually learn your preferences over time.
Wow.
And then it can adjust its assistance based on what you like.
Okay.
Like you could tell it, I prefer visual representations of project timelines. And it would adapt its output to match that.
So it's really like having a virtual assistant that's tailor-made for you.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And I think that level of personalization could make a big difference, not just in terms of productivity,
Right.
but also just, job satisfaction.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when you're working with tools that fit your style, everything just flows better.
It's smoother, less frustrating.
All right, so we've talked about how ChatGPT can improve communication, help with tasks, support decision-making, and even make documentation less painful.
Right.
But Steve Jr. brings up another aspect that I think is super important.
Okay.
And that's the way ChatGPT can actually facilitate team collaboration.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's not just an individual tool. It's something that can really help teams work better together.
Exactly. And he gives some examples of how that might work.
Like what?
Well, he suggests using ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas, manage team communication,
Okay.
and even foster a more positive team culture.
Interesting. So how would that look in practice?
Well, imagine using ChatGPT to set up a virtual brainstorming session. It could generate prompts and questions to get people thinking creatively.
I like that.
And then everyone could contribute their ideas in a more structured way.
That would be really helpful.
And it could also help with things like keeping everyone informed about project updates.
Oh, yeah. That's always a challenge.
Or making sure that, important decisions are communicated clearly to the whole team.
Definitely. And I bet it could also help with those little things that boost morale.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, using ChatGPT to acknowledge individual contributions or celebrate team milestones.
It's like having a virtual cheerleader.
Exactly. And I think it's really interesting to think about how ChatGPT can go beyond just the technical stuff and actually help build stronger, more cohesive teams.
It's about using technology to support human connection.
Yes, and that's a powerful idea.
Totally. So, we've seen how ChatGPT has the potential to really revolutionize pretty much every aspect of project management.
Pretty impressive.
But as with any new technology, I think it's important to be aware of the potential downsides too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even the best tools need to be used responsibly.
And Steve Jr. actually acknowledges that in his blog post.
Okay, good.
He reminds us to be mindful of things like data privacy.
Yeah.
And making sure that ChatGPT is actually being used in a way that benefits everyone on the team.
So it's about finding that balance.
Right.
Between embracing the potential of AI and making sure it's used ethically.
Yeah, and in a way that aligns with our values.
Exactly.
And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Yeah, this has been a great discussion.
We've covered a lot of ground today, and I think we've got some really valuable insights from Steve Jr.'s blog post.
Absolutely. Lots to think about.
So in the next part, we'll delve into some of the challenges and potential downsides of using ChatGPT for project management.
Yeah, let's explore those a little bit more.
Because it's important to consider both sides of the coin before we jump into anything head first.
Definitely. We need to be informed.
So stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive. It's interesting. We started off talking about how ChatGPT can help us communicate better.
Right.
But I think it's also super important to communicate clearly about how we're using ChatGPT itself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, we need to be transparent with our teams.
Definitely.
And with stakeholders about how this tool is being used.
Absolutely.
What data it's accessing, how it's informing our decisions, all of that.
Transparency is key, for sure.
And Steve Jr. actually makes this comparison to other project management software.
Oh, okay.
Like, we wouldn't just implement a new tool without explaining it to everyone, right?
Right. You got to bring the team on board.
Exactly.
Show them how it works, how it's going to impact their workflow.
Yeah. And it should be the same with ChatGPT.
Makes sense.
We need to be upfront about it.
It builds trust too, right?
Oh, yeah.
When you're open about how you're using these tools, it shows that you're not trying to hide anything.
Right. Like, it shows you're committed to using it in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly.
And it helps avoid that whole black box effect.
Oh, yeah, where decisions are being made and nobody really knows why.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want people to feel like they're being managed by a robot.
Right. It's a tool.
Exactly.
A powerful tool, but still a tool.
It should be augmenting human intelligence.
Right. Not replacing it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Which actually brings us to another really important point that Steve Jr. brings up.
What's that?
The human element of project management.
Yes, that's crucial.
It's easy to get caught up in all this cool new technology.
Yeah.
And forget that projects are ultimately about people.
At the end of the day, it's all about people.
Building relationships, motivating teams, all that stuff that requires human skills and empathy.
Things that AI can't replicate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT can help us be more efficient, make better decisions.
For sure.
But it can't replace that human touch that's so essential for good leadership.
And that's a good reminder for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
As we explore these new AI tools, let's not forget about the human side of things.
Totally. So to kind of wrap things up, it seems like ChatGPT has the potential to be a real game changer for project managers.
I think so.
It can help us with communication, workflows, decision-making, team building, all of that.
It's a pretty impressive tool.
But like any powerful tool, it needs to be used responsibly.
Absolutely.
We need to be mindful of data privacy, transparency, the human element, all of those things.
Those ethical considerations are super important.
And I think Steve Jr. sums it up really well in his blog post.
What does he say?
He says that the future of project management is unfolding before our eyes, and it's filled with both incredible opportunities and important ethical considerations.
Well said.
So it's up to us to navigate those opportunities and considerations in a way that benefits everyone.
I think that's a great takeaway.
So we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of what ChatGPT can do.
And how you might be able to use it in your own work.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is, and we're just scratching the surface here.
There's so much more to explore.
But for now, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.